As the host of Neutralize the Mama Trauma podcast, I am delighted to be able to bring you this podcast. My name is Wendy Lopez, and I would like to introduce myself to you. I specialize in helping people overcome their emotional blocks through different techniques, through emotional empowerment coaching and compassionate healing light facilitation. As a mom who has experienced narcissistic trauma, I help moms eradicate self-doubt in order to regain self-confidence to elevate their status both at home and at work. In our podcast, we discuss people's struggles, triumphs, and failures. We dive deeper into self-love, self-compassion, self-acceptance, and mindful, holistic tips. In every episode, I hope that you can take a golden nugget of advice and apply it to the journey of motherhood in order to raise your level of awareness. Welcome to Neutralize the Mama Trauma podcast, where you find healing and creative mental thought advice from experts on past pain, narcissistic experiences, and trauma. Today, I have a special guest. Her name is Tina Hnatiuk. She is a renowned yoga meditation teacher and life coach who helps busy women and moms lower stress, anxiety, overwhelm in 20 minutes a day or less. Through her down-to-earth coaching style, saucy live speaking, live online courses, and yoga membership, and then she can tell you what the membership is here. She offers simple and protocol tools to empower and inspire women to become who they want to be. She's also a driven Aries who's passionate about popcorn, handmade woolen socks, and cooking delicious, most of the time, meals for her family. So I'm excited to have you here with your saucy personality.
Well, it's so nice to meet you.
Yeah.
Thank you for having me.
Yes. And Aries, I love Aries. They're fire.
Oh, yes.
Right. And they're very driven, and ambitious too. So they have a lot of energy. So wonderful. And before getting on the podcast, you were talking about mindfulness.
Mm-hmm.
And now that we said Aries, because I do some astrology, how did you find quieting the mind or being mindful and being an Aries?
Oh, man. Well, it's work, and I think that I'm like the biggest testimonial of how mindfulness can help, because I do have like that fire and drive, and there's like an engine burning all the time of doing.
Right.
Yeah, totally. And so it has been probably one of the most profound practices for me, learning not only how to quiet the mind, but the mechanism of my mind. So I don't believe all of the stories that are there. I definitely feel more empowered in my life. So I'm not constantly following that drive, and instead being more introspective and reflective on what is it that I actually want. And is this serving my needs and my goals, or is it just this constant push? So it's been really helpful that way. And it's also been like one of the most transformative tools I've had for healing, as well as for my relationships and parenting. Because as you probably also know with Aries, is we are real firecrackers, and we can have a pretty big temper. We're known as the youngest of the zodiac signs, so they can be very impulsive and tactless. And it has really helped definitely calm that down. So I don't get triggered as much. Even if I notice the triggers, I'm able to observe them without acting on them, and work in a more proactive and hopefully intelligent way versus impulsivity and losing it for no reason. So it's definitely been like one of the most transformative practices. I'm a much calmer, more patient and present parent and spouse because of it.
Yeah, I could just imagine. And so, how did you find the practice of yoga to be a tool to help you? How did you get into mindfulness?
It started with yoga. A million years ago, I started working at a little tiny store that was local to my house, which is called Lululemon. And now, of course, they're like a multinational.
Right.
But they were super tiny then. And even back then, their culture was really strong, and they would pay for yoga and fitness classes and stuff like that for staff. And I thought I would try it because it was a big part of the culture. And I instantly fell in love. Like, I went to my first class and I was blown away by being in this space of like all different demographics and ages and abilities. And we were all kind of, even though we might be there for different reasons, it was like there was this real sense of community. And I'd never experienced anything like it. And it was the first time that I actually felt like really what it was like to be in my body. And I couldn't get enough. And after that, it led into deeper and deeper practices like meditation and breath work. And it has been my spirituality in my life ever since. It influences everything that I do now.
So you found a really deep connection with your sense of self when you were doing that. Oh, that's amazing. And from that moment where you were doing those classes, and you were mentioning for the podcast about talking about your traumatic birth that you had with one of your children, or did you have them all traumatic?
It's just my one, my
Oh,
one
just
and
your
only.
one. Okay.
Yeah. I got the best one. I didn't need any more.
One did it, right? Oh my goodness. So what was going on with the traumatic birth that you were having?
So this was about 7 years ago. And I mean, I've been a yoga teacher, life coach, and mindfulness teacher for almost a decade by that point, and been practicing for well over a decade. And so I thought I had all the tools. My intention was to have a natural birth. I felt really strong and healthy. And there's a lot of pressure societally for what a birth is going to look like. And I felt a lot of that pressure, that it was going to be a natural birth. I wasn't going to have any drugs. And I had a very common condition. I don't even remember what it's called now. It's like GH positive. And what it means is that they just have to monitor the baby and give me, I think, an antibiotic while the baby comes out of the birth canal. And my water, especially because my water broke. So my water broke at like 4 a.m. My husband and I went to the hospital. I was at 4 centimeters. And I made the mistake of the attending doctor who saw me said that because I had that GH positive or whatever, that I needed to be on antibiotics immediately, and also that I needed to be intubated to get the baby out faster. So they put me on Pitocin, which is, or not intubated, sorry, that's not the word I needed, to help speed up the delivery. So they put me on Pitocin to try and push the delivery faster and speed up my contractions. And well, what it did was it definitely sped up my contractions. It did not progress the delivery. So so I was having contractions about a minute apart for almost 14 hours. And I did really well. I wasn't on any medication. I didn't need anything else. I went through it. It's such an amazing thing what happens with birth. You just kind of, it becomes this other, almost like, I don't know, in a trance. And so I would literally sleep for a minute at a time between contractions. And then I realized at the 14-hour mark, where nothing had happened, that I'm like, there's no way that if this baby decides to come soon, that I'll be able to push. I'll be too exhausted. And so they gave me a walking epidural, which did not turn out to be a walking epidural. It actually froze everything. But I was able to sleep, which was a relief. But what happened also was that now, because of the epidural, whenever that it started to drop, the baby's heartbeat would start dropping all the time. And so when they would take me off the Pitocin, now my body wouldn't pick up the contractions because it had been on this drug for 14 hours. So my body wasn't contracting, and my baby's heart rate kept dropping. And so the doctors had advised me that my only option was to have a C-section, which was like my least desirable option. It was like my personal nightmare, actually, because I'm terrified of surgery. And and then so I ended up getting prepped for a C-section, and, they lay you naked on the table, you're strapped down, arms strapped down at your sides. And they put this, the little curtain, my husband's in there with me. I'm terrified. And they gave me the spinal, which is supposed to freeze everything from the chest down so they can take the baby out. And what happened was that it went high. So what that means is it didn't just go down, it went up. I was actually it depressed my respiration. So I was stopping breathing. And I'd said to the anesthetist, I'm like, I can't breathe. And I was literally losing my breath as I was saying this. And he's like, you're fine. Lots of people feel this way. You just need to put a hand on your belly so you can feel the breath. And so I did put my hand on my belly, and I was actually dying. And because my breath was stopping. And the last thing I remember was everyone all of a sudden freaking out, being gassed, intubated. So like tube down my throat to breathe for me because my body had stopped breathing. My husband was rushed out. And then I woke up in a room, I think actually, and I don't know if this is actually true, to be honest, because I feel like it could have been like, one of those dreams, but I feel like the anesthetist was in there when I woke and that he apologized. But I don't know if it's actually true or not. And then my husband.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Oh.
But I don't know, like it's one of those hazy things coming out of drugs, and I had tubes up my nose and my throat was sore from having been intubated. I don't know how long I'd been under. I felt totally out of my body. I didn't know where my baby was. I didn't know where my husband was. And then a while later, my husband had come in with my son and put him on my chest. And it was just like the most surreal experience. Like all of a sudden this little thing was given to me and I didn't know what to do. Like any new mom, I think, but it was just the horror of that experience of not only feeling completely out of control through that time, but also almost dying and no one believing me, left me with PTSD for a long time, where I couldn't sleep without experiencing like I was dying, and nobody was believing me or able to help me. Every time I closed my eyes, I would pretty much start bawling. And then I had the responsibility of this little new life that I felt totally overwhelmed and underprepared for. And also that like my body now was healing. Like it was hard for me to even walk, after a C-section, and, looking after this little guy, and not to mention all of the other mental stuff that was going on, and also the tremendous disappointment of how things went, and feeling like my body had betrayed me because I'd felt so prepared, and then everything went so sideways. Like it really, there's not a whole lot that could have gone more wrong than it did. And so it took a long time. And I'm a tough person. I think this is another characteristic of Aries, is like they will soldier on through anything. And so like my aim was to be the best mom that I could, and to, follow all of the things, and, find out all of the right ways to parent and look after this baby, and what are the best practices. And during that time, every time I would bring my baby in Canada, we have like these public nurses. So for the first 2 weeks, they'll actually come to your house and check on you and the baby and make sure you're okay. But after that, you go for regular checks at a public health clinic, and they'll weigh your baby and make sure that they're doing okay, make sure you're doing okay. And the other thing they do there is they do a screening for PPD. So they'll give you like this sheet that'll have a questionnaire, and I would just lie because there was no way that I could acknowledge or face the tremendous, I don't even know how to describe, just the numbness I was feeling and hopelessness. And I had also a baby that didn't sleep, and he nursed constantly. So I was exhausted because newborns typically, as I'm told, sleep like 20 hours, up to 20 hours a day. And mine slept 11, and none of it consecutively. So that meant I also didn't sleep, and he would nurse for up to 3 hours at a time. So I still to this day feel like part of this, like his lack of sleep and his constant nursing was kind of a calling, like calling me to come to him, like, mommy, I'm here, trying to get me to snap out of what was happening inside of me. And I started to develop some anxiety. I was constantly terrified to leave him with anyone because I was worried that someone was going to harm him. It was so crazy. Like when I look at things now, it's like, I can't believe my mind had these types of stories, but I was totally spiraling.
Wow. So psychologically, you were spiraling out with like your experience that you had that was so traumatic. And it was just like, the way I see it, it's kind of like we dig ourselves more, right? Because the facade that we put on as moms is like, we got it all under control, because otherwise we're going to seem like a failure. But what
we
we
have
really
to have it all
do,
under control. Like there's no other
right,
option.
right. And so since we have that mentality, we actually dig ourselves deeper and deeper into what the real problem is, but nobody knows it. Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah. And I just could not, I felt like this could not happen to me. It was total hubris. Like this could not happen to me. I have all the tools. I'm a life coach. I'm a yoga teacher.
Right.
I'm a mindfulness teacher. I am like a neuroscience nerd. I love social psychology. Like this is like my wheelhouse. Like how could this happen to me, and and so I was in such denial about it. And then finally my my moment of clarity happened was I was sitting on the couch, totally like numb. Again, my baby is nursing for hours in the living room. I'm in like dirty sweats and a dirty house coat because it's just too much to get dressed, just feeling like a bag of shit, like truly staring at another rerun of Friends for like hours on end and just trying to get through the day. And my husband walks into the living room and he looks at me kind of differently and he goes, "Are you drowning?" And I was shocked because, I was doing all of the things and I was, trying to show up and take care of this guy and little guy. And I was already back at work and, so trying to make everything happen. And I was like, and I just looked at him and I said, "What do you mean?" And he's like, "Well, your best friend just called me and said that you're drowning. What's happening?" And instantly my eyes flooded with tears. One, because of a relief, because it had been named, and then the other part was shame, because I had to face that this was true.
Oh, yes.
I could no longer hide. And so it was one of the most powerful and beautiful moments of my life, because it forced me to look at what I was doing, what I was believing, how I was living, how I was parenting. And my husband and I had to have some really good conversations. And I knew what I needed was I'd already lost myself. I'd already lost myself, not only in the birth, but in the parenting, like there was no sense of self anymore. It was just and I do believe in matrescence. Like I do believe there is a birthing of the mother with the birthing of the child. And we still have to maintain that connection to self. You know, we cannot be everything to everyone else and nothing to ourselves. That self-abandonment was, in my case, I feel what created most of my challenges psychologically, because there was no room for me anymore. And so after that, my husband and I came up with a plan for me to start doing things that were like, one, trusting to leave my son with, you know, my husband for a little bit longer than like half an hour at a time. So I could go and do things that filled me up, like going running in the morning by myself, not just pushing the jogger, and getting out with my friends and doing things that just made me feel like me again, and meditating and doing yoga and things that connected me back to myself and my spirit. And within a month, it was like a complete 180. I was like a different person.
Wow. So thank goodness for your best friend that came in
and my husband too, for not, you know, dismissing that and not being afraid to approach me about it. Like I see that as a real act of bravery for him too, and compassion.
Yes. And then I'm mentioning your best friend first because she was your voice.
She was my voice, 100%.
She was your voice. And, you know, and it's so amazing because, you know, you're so vivacious, you're so strong, you're so strong-willed, you're focused on what and how it should be, right? And you had all the tools and it just went poof. Right. And so this is why I have the podcast, because moms don't have the tools most of the time. Right. And I love what you said, that there's a birthing of a mother when there's a, what did you say? Can you repeat that again? You said there's a birthing of a mother when there is a birthing
the birth of the child. Yeah. So it's called matrescence, and it's a term of what it is to birth the mother, because there is a shedding of the person you were before as you become this new, or take on this new role, I should say, not become this new role. You're still always you. And I think that's where a lot of mothers' stress and overwhelm comes from, is that, you know, we become this role instead of take on this role.
Yes.
And there is a difference. And there is a big difference.
It's a huge difference, right? So, so that is to say that, and then, you know, you had the support and compassion of your husband, but then you guys worked out a plan for you to take some time. And I just want to stress to moms to take the time so you have that time to regain your sense of self, because that's what you were doing, correct?
Yes. Yeah.
Yes, that was
100%.
allowing you to come back to your sense of self. Oh, and I know I have 3 boys, and I was blessed with their eating cycles, so I didn't really go through sleep deprivation, and that's a huge thing. I've had other guests that we've touched on some of their birth trauma that they had, and sleep deprivation is in itself psychologically doing something to the mom that affects the mom and the child. Because I had one that she said that she was starting to what did she say? Kind of like not feed her baby. So there was something else going on with it, but it was all from lack of sleep.
Yeah. Well, your sleep is one of the most critical things for our health. Our prefrontal cortex, which is the part of our brain that does all of our executive functioning, like decision making, reasoning, makes us a nice human being, it is not able to function when we have a lack of sleep. And so what happens is the amygdala, which is kind of the seat of aggression and fear and all of the really yucky feelings that we have, starts is not able to be calmed down by the prefrontal cortex. And it's activated really in fight or flight. And so we lose the capacity to function as a normal person, make decisions, reason. So yeah, it's like, it's all related. And so sleep deprivation is like, I wish they focused more on that with mothers, because, you know, they talk about sleep plans for the baby, but what about for the mom? Because how is she supposed to mom if her brain is offline all the time for days on end? You know, like it's really damaging. And then there's this constant stress response happening as well.
Yes, and that makes so much sense as to what was happening to this mom, that she was starting to, because she was so fixed, I remember now, she was so fixated in breastfeeding, didn't want to do formula, but she was sleep deprived, that she couldn't make that coherent decision of, okay, this is hindsight, because this is what she told me. You know, once she says that she got sleep, then she could say, okay, the breastfeeding thing is not working. I'm gonna now put my ego aside and give the baby formula. Because it was so ingrained in her, she wanted to do it naturally, that the baby received the nutrients. But she was like, but the baby received the nutrients because I gave him at least a month's worth, but she wanted to continue. And that was like 4 months of sleep deprivation.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm so glad like you're sharing the story, because it's so real and not really talked about.
No, it's not. And, you know, and people talk about supporting mothers, but, you know, what are we doing to support mothers? Like there just isn't that availability. And I think a lot of, and depending on what your family units are like too, like, do you have family close by that when they come over, do they just want to entertain the baby, or will they actually take the baby so you can get some sleep, or do some laundry for you, or, you know, help you caretake in your home, or are they just there to visit and you have to clean up for them so they can, so it presents well, you know, because I've experienced that too, where it's work to even have them come, and then it's not helpful. And so there's also that resentment.
Amazing.
And it's more work.
It is. You know? It is.
When you're already exhausted.
Right. Yeah. It's really like what you just said, resentment. And resentment really is real when you have a baby, because you can resent your husband real quick. You can resent your partner real quick, because our expectations of being a mom, for one, and then our expectations of the care of the child, and our expectations for like our surrounding, our environment. And when those needs are not being met and you're sleep deprived, then their resentment starts building towards the parent, and towards the partner, or towards the child, or even towards yourself.
100%. Yeah.
So that's so much to carry.
Yeah. And then that feeling, I think also, because I don't know if it was like this before, I can't, you know, because I wasn't a parent before social media, but there's this constant barrage of information that is saying what you should be, and that you have to measure up to this. And this is what's normal. And what people aren't talking about is this stuff, which is actually what's normal. Like most of the moms that I know that are, you know, honest and are like, it's not that they haven't, many have had beautiful, wonderful birth stories. That's not the point, but just like the experience of those early days of motherhood are really tough. It's not just beautiful pictures of babies in baskets. And, you know, it's a lot of feelings of helplessness and hopelessness, and feeling underprepared and lacking capacity, and feeling like you're failing somehow, somewhere, all the time. At least these were my feelings. I can't speak for everyone, but you know, but like, this is definitely what I felt a lot of the time. I remember my husband walking into my son's bedroom when I was in there one day with him, and he was just screaming his head off, and I'm bawling as well. Cause I'm like, what kind of mother am I if I can't even soothe my own baby? And he was just, and he was like, babies cry. It was like, such a relief, because I'd attached the story of what it means, right, to mother, or if he's crying and me not being able to soothe, instead of just like, yeah, that's what they do. Like, and so it wasn't my job to fix it, like me being there is enough. And, so these are all things
That's so
later.
beautiful. Right. And I want that to land with moms, what you said, because we're trying to fix it, and the baby's crying and it's okay, and we just have to be there.
Mhm.
But I believe with the crying, since we try to fix it, then we start feeling despair,
Mhm. Like it's us.
right?
We're
Yes,
failing.
like
Yeah.
yeah, right?
Mhm.
Oh, so if we can just get into that space of the baby's crying, but I'm there.
Mhm.
And it's like, I guess if we feel that if the baby is not crying, we got it all under control,
Totally. And that's like
right?
when they're sleeping. For some people, that's really like, I was lucky my
Yeah.
son wasn't colicky, but I have mom friends whose babies literally
Hmm.
screamed nonstop for 9 months, nonstop. And like, just imagine the mental toll that takes of just trying to not only tolerate it, but endure it,
Yes.
you know?
Yes, right. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
I'm so
So,
glad that we're speaking about this, because it is so I want to go into your mindfulness work again,
mhm.
because when it takes a mental toll, and mindfulness can be applied to help, because the despair and then not feeling enough.
Mhm.
What's a tip that moms can use? Like a practical tip that they can use if they're feeling that way.
I think honestly, the most important thing we do is start acting as if we are. So for me, the catalyst for my change was claiming time for myself. And it doesn't mean that I'm taking hours
Mm.
of time out of the day to just do whatever or go to the spa or whatever,
Mhm.
even just 5 minutes by myself in the bathroom without a baby on my lap while I'm peeing, like,
Mhm.
those
Mhm.
those types of things. But claiming that time where it's like, I'm taking 10 minutes of yoga. I'm going to go for a walk around the block alone. I'm going to
Mm.
listen to a podcast for 15 minutes. I'm going just something
Mm.
that is just for you. So often when we are in this space of a lack of worth, then we act like it, like we almost like double down on proving that we're not, by ignoring ourselves completely, like becoming selfless, meaning we lose the self. We literally self
Mm.
abandon even harder. And
Mhm.
it's so easy for moms because like everybody needs us, and so
Mhm.
and it feels natural. And there's also a little bit, it feels good to feel needed,
Mm.
right? And that
Mhm.
people are leaning on us. But somebody who has a strong sense of self-worth and self-esteem also takes care of the self. So that means claiming that
Mm.
time. And it doesn't, like I said, it doesn't have to be long. Like my whole business model shifted to make things accessible for moms, 5, 10, 15 minutes. So that every day you have something just for you, with that you can reconnect to yourself, remember who you are beyond the demands of everybody else. And once you can come
Mhm.
from that place, it is
Yes.
so much more solid. You can feel so much. For me, I felt like way more integrated. I'm able to make better decisions. I'm more patient,
Mhm.
calmer, because there's not that resentment. I filled
Right.
myself up. I have more to give you now.
Mm. Yes. And I like what you said. Come back to remembering who you are.
Hmm. Yes.
Right? Yeah, that is so beautiful.
Hmm.
And those minutes, like 5 minutes, 10 minutes, really do make a big difference.
Even
Um,
5 breaths make a
Yeah.
huge difference.
So what's going on with the body that it actually is, or the brain and the body that it does make a difference? Because the only reason why I'm asking that question with your expertise is because as a busy mom or havoc, chaos going on, you don't believe that.
Hmm. Well, what it does is it regulates our nervous system. And our nervous
Mm,
system, as I mentioned, when we get into fight or flight, what happens is our body is
okay.
flooded with hormones, and it will start that cycle. And our brain goes offline. It makes it difficult to make decisions. We can't think.
Okay.
It's like, when you're just like trying to solve a problem and your brain is blank, like you just
Yes.
like nothing is making sense. And you're
Uh-huh.
highly irritable. There's there's all these mood swings that come with it. This comes from the stress response. And so when you take like 5 minutes to take, or even 5 conscious belly breaths, or take 5 minutes to meditate, or 5 minutes of yoga, all of these things regulate your nervous system, or even just going out for a walk. Looking outside even can regulate your nervous system, like looking at nature. One of the things that calmed my
Mm,
son down when he was in his early days and stuff was I would turn him towards the window at the blue sky, and almost instantly it would calm him down, and the trees outside, and even when nothing else would. And so we have this connection with nature that calms our nervous systems. And one of the things that happens when we are able to regulate ourselves and calm the nervous system down is then we come back online, we're able to think clearly once again, and we start to feel much more stable and connected.
mhm.
And the beautiful thing about that too is when we regulate ourselves, we can regulate those around us. All of us are co-regulating each other all the time. So even our spouses, we're
Oh.
co-regulating each other. Our children, we're co-regulating them. When they're young and they're losing it, like when my husband had said, babies cry,
Mhm.
all you need to do is be there. Literally, that's the truth. Because as long as I'm calm, I can regulate his nervous system. So he will eventually calm down from my calm. When my son was a toddler and having wild tantrums, even now he's 7 and sometimes, loses his mind. As long as I am the calm space in the room, then he is able to calm down. But as soon as we
Really?
feed
That's
that fire,
amazing.
yeah, it's really powerful stuff.
Mm. Okay. Thank you for that, because I wanted moms to really have an in-depth realization of 5 minutes will make a difference for you.
Oh, it's scientifically proven.
See? Yeah, that's awesome that it is, because they need to believe that it will make a big difference for them, because they
Mhm,
get so used to the crazy, crazy, crazy,
mhm.
and that's where they're spinning, and that becomes like their normal,
Yeah. And the big thing
right?
is to do regular interruptions, right? So
Okay.
that you're interrupting that cycle of busy, busy, busy. And literally all it means is just creating some kind of ritual or practice every day. So some kind of a daily commitment of 5 minutes to you, where it's like you sit for 5 minutes, you journal for
Mm,
5 minutes, you meditate for 5 minutes, you do 5 minutes of yoga, breathe for 5 minutes. All of these, when you do it regularly
mm,
and consistently, that's when you start to see the long-term effects of not only self-regulation, but also like better sleep. You improve your mood. You can actually raise your happiness baseline, like tremendous benefits from just 5 minutes a day. But it does take consistency. It's not like a one-off where it's like, okay,
right.
I sat for
Yes.
5 minutes. I'm good for a month.
Yes, right, right. I'm glad you said that. No, it's true. It's true. Because I can see how that consistency can then lead, it's kind of going to a gym, right? It'll lead to your strengthening those muscles, like the mind muscles, the lungs breathing a little more, and then you have more capacity to do 10 minutes, and then you can
Mhm.
slowly increase.
Yeah. And you don't even have to. Like, there's documented benefits of 6-week mindfulness meditation programs that, as little as like 5 to 8 minutes a day, have
Mm-hmm.
long-term benefits that permanently change your brain. And there
Mm,
is no other health intervention that can do that. Like, once you stop working out, your muscles will start to, break down. You're not going to
mm-hmm.
maintain your muscle mass. If you diet for 6 weeks and then go back to a high calorie or high sugar, high fat diet, your body will go back to what it was before, but mindfulness meditation is one of the only interventions that actually will rewire your brain. It rewires
Yes.
happiness.
Right.
It rewards. Yeah. So it's like
Yes.
really, really cool that you can invest a short period of time and then change your life,
Yes, exactly. I love that. Any wisdom or advice for moms before we close the episode?
That you're worth those 5-10 minutes a day. And that, I think sometimes, at least this was my thought. It's like, what do you mean I only get 5 or 10 minutes? That means like I'm worth nothing. But it's like, if you're taking nothing already, that is like a huge leap. And you are 100% entitled to taking time to yourself and reconnecting to yourself, because you do hold so much. So you need to be able to come at things from a place of fullness and wholeness and love. And I really believe, as a mom myself, this is my philosophy, is that I want my son to see the family I want him to create in the future. I don't want him to expect his wife to be frazzled, exhausted, doing everything and him doing nothing. I don't want him to feel like this is what's normal. I don't want him to think that mothers are all self-sacrificing and that they don't take care of themselves or believe that they're worth it. I want him to see a family that everybody takes care of each other, that we encourage each other's health goals, and support each other in the things that are important to us, and not because of not because you do or you don't have a certain role. Like, I want him to see that this is what normal is and to expect that, and so he can support his future partner, and also know that this is just like the normal way of things. So I fight for that. I fight for that future for him.
Yes, that's beautiful. And thank you for doing that, because that, as a mom, we create the better today for the better generations to come. And
Yes.
that's a healthier way of doing it. And this is why, I have my Soul Mama Summit that I do and my podcast. It's all aligned with all this, because this is what I see for the future. And we really are breaking the cycles. We really are creating new cycles that'll benefit not just us, but we're really including the family in it.
Yeah. I really believe that parenting, so much of it is just dealing with our own stuff. When we you want to be a better parent, you deal with your stuff.
It's so true. It's so true.
Yeah.
Same goes, I just want to add, because we're speaking about this, I just want to add, I know through my husband, I know some people that adopted. And, I believe that people can buy into the idea of having kids, but adopting is even though they're not yours biologically, but adopting is the same thing. You're learning for yourself.
Yeah.
So I just want to add that if, people adopt, know that it's not just about having kids telling them what to do. You're going to have a lot of mirroring and self-reflection of what is brought to your home to be a better parent. That's the whole point, right? You want a parent, you're adopting. Well, you're going to become that better parent, because you're going to have situations, and it's not, and these were kids in foster. And so there's a lot of other things that go along with it, but it runs deep. But the whole point is, I believe that the parents who are adopting, it's like a great opportunity for self-work.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I don't think, I can't speak from that experience, because I have a biological child, but I believe parenthood has to be very similar in the sense that you are constantly being challenged with your own beliefs and assumptions and models of the world, and then looking at what is it that you want Like, what is the outcome that you want for them? And so much of what I learned is, do I want to be managing a behavior, or do I want to be teaching a skill? And my philosophy has shifted so much from, instead of managing behaviors, like, what is the root here? What is he needing? How do I regulate him at this time? What can I teach him at this time, or model? Because that's such a big part. And I think that's where my self-work has been so critical, because I can't model what I don't have, right? So if I'm showing up as a mom who feels like she's nothing and is constantly self-abandoning, then that's what I'm showing him as normal. But if I'm showing up as as a mom who takes time for herself and takes care of her family, and also encourages her partner to take care of himself, and we encourage him to take care of himself, and model healthy ways of dealing with our anger or frustration, that's way more powerful than, trying to get him to stop doing a behavior that is undesirable to me or inconvenient to me at the time, right?
Right. So you're saying, so instead of focusing on managing the behavior, to teach a skill, or what?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So how, for example, like if he's dysregulated and having a tantrum, first helping to co-regulate him, because he's not, kids aren't able to do that up until, I think it's like age 7, where they start to learn how to do it well. But also modeling to him how I deal with my frustration. How do I deal with my disappointment, my anger? So he can see it, and he knows this is appropriate ways of doing it, or showing him ways that he can get those difficult emotions out of his body as well, whether it's like hitting his bed, or throwing something, or and allowing him to figure out how to self-soothe and work through the difficult emotions, so that they don't get stuck and they're able to move through.
Yes, beautiful. Thank you so much. So how can our audience get in touch with you? How can they find you online?
I have 2 websites. So I have my main website, which is tinahnatiuk.com, and I have Mindfulness for Kids, which is for parents to teach to their children. And this helps tremendously with skills on helping your kids learn how to regulate themselves, and also teaching you some tools as well, and learning things about like self-compassion, and how to teach that to your kids as well, and resilience and grit, as well as Mindfulness for Moms, which is where I teach moms how to learn mindfulness in 6 weeks in as little as 5 minutes or less, or 10 minutes or less, and as little as 5. And then I also have Quick Bliss Yoga, which is my online yoga platform designed specifically for moms, busy moms, where all 260 videos and audio meditations are 20 minutes or less, and designed to lower stress and anxiety. It's all mindfulness based, and it helps you stay strong in mind, body, and spirit.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. And I look forward to collaborating with you. And I'm so grateful to have you on here, your presence and your wisdom. And I'm hoping that the moms take the wisdom of Nugget here with them to apply it to not I can't say that word, but to de-stress in a way where they can cut it in half or minimize it with the 5-minute tools that you mentioned.
Yeah,
right?
It often doesn't take much, but you just have to commit to it and commit to yourself.
Yes, absolutely. And that's a great thing. Commit to yourself to at least taking 5 minutes a day. So if anything that they take here, the 5 minutes a day would be great for them to commit to themselves. Because once you're committed, and once you can say it and do it, you'll start noticing, like what you said, that it's been scientific proven that it is one thing that is better than medication.
I'm not going to touch that part, but
Well, yeah, right. We're not doctors here, but it can be better than medication, right? But again, if you're taking medication, take your medication, because we don't want to go there, right?
But it can be, and also a really great intervention. And it's, you never know.
Yeah, and then so I just want to add to that because when I was going through my own motherhood, when my kids were younger, I was suggested to take anxiety medication, and I opted not to. And I did more of meditation and mindfulness. So I know that you can have a healthier route in my personal experience.
Yes.
That's that's what I did.
Hmm.
So thank you so much. And I look forward to all the goodness that you bring for the other moms that we'll be having in our other platform.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for having me. It was so lovely to connect with
Yes,
you.
thank you so much. I appreciate it. Thank you for taking the time to listen to Neutralize the Mama Trauma podcast. If you haven't already, please hit the like and subscribe button so you don't miss any new episodes. It would also mean the world to me if you're able to take a moment and rate and review my podcast on how it was helpful to you. Also, please connect with me on my social media platforms. Thank you so much, and I hope to see you in the next episode.